As the movers maneuvered the last section of the Italian leather sofa up the stairs, I heard Vanessa's voice echoing through the living room as if she were announcing a touchdown. "Oh, look, there's the mother-in-law. She's footing the bill. She has plenty of money. Right, Margaret?" All eyes locked on me. The two men from the furniture company stopped dead in their tracks, looking at me with that mix of curiosity and pity that only strangers display when they witness someone else's public humiliation. My son, Tyler, was standing by the bay window, hands deep in his pockets, studying the hardwood floor as if it were the most fascinating thing in the world. I felt something inside me crack in two, but I kept my composure. "So, this is the visit you invited me for, Tyler." My voice came out calmer than I expected, almost icy. He didn't answer. He just looked away toward the manicured lawn. Vanessa let out a nervous little giggle and continued barking orders about where to place the marble coffee table. $45,000 in furniture. And apparently, I was the surprise sponsor of their interior design dream. But what I did in the next few hours made them both scream in terror. Because there are things worse than a slammed door or a raised voice. There are silences that topple empires. For 20 years, I worked as a seamstress in a shop downtown, waking up at 5 in the morning to catch the first bus. My hands know every stitch, every type of fabric, every way to fix what others consider a lost cause. When I was widowed and Tyler was just 7 years old, I decided my son would have everything I never had: education, opportunities, dignidad. I remember the nights when he was asleep and I kept the sewing machine humming, finishing wedding dresses for clients who never knew how many tears of exhaustion fell onto those ivory silks. Each stitch was a promise. Each finished gown was another month of private school tuition for Tyler. I never complained. I never made him feel like a burden. On the contrary, he was my engine, my reason to get up when my body begged to quit. Tyler grew up to be a sweet kid, the kind who hugged you without being asked. In the afternoons, when he came back from school, he would sit next to me in the little workspace I improvised in our living room and tell me about his classes, his friends, his dreams. "Someday I'm going to buy you a big house, Mom, with a garden and everything, so you don't have to work anymore." I would stroke his hair and tell him I already had everything I needed. And it was true. Those moments, with the rhythmic sound of the sewing machine in the background and his voice filling the room, were my wealth. When he finished college, I took out a loan to help him with his first business venture, a small graphic design firm. He paid me back every cent. I have to give him that. But more than the money, what I was looking to maintain was that bond, that complicity we had built during the hard years. Everything changed when he met Vanessa. I won't say I hated her from the start, because that would be a lie. At first, she seemed like a confident, modern woman, with that energy of someone who grew up never knowing what it meant to go without. She came from a wealthy family. That was evident in every gesture, in every casual comment about vacations in the Hamptons and restaurants that were just names in magazines to me. Tyler was dazzled. He looked at her as if she were the solution to all the voids he didn't even know he had. And I, like every mother watching her son fall in love, tried to be happy for him. I tried to build a bridge with her. I gave her a hand-embroidered tablecloth for their first place together. Vanessa looked at it with that polite smile that means thanks. But this is going straight into a box in the basement, and said it was very crafty. I don't know why that word hurt so much. Crafty. As if my hands, which had supported my son for 20 years, produced inferior goods. Over time, invitations to their house became scarce. When I did go, I noticed how Vanessa would fluff the sofa cushions the second I stood up, as if my presence left an undesirable mark. Tyler started visiting me less. He always had an excuse. Work, exhaustion, social commitments. I understood, or at least, that's what I told myself. He has his own life now. It's normal. This is how it's supposed to be. But deep down, in that place where we keep the truths that hurt too much to speak aloud, I knew I was losing my son. Not to death or geographic distance, but to something worse. Indifference, disguised as love. The calls got shorter, the visits more sporadic. And when I called, it was always Vanessa who answered with a, "He's busy, he'll call you back," that never materialized. But I kept waiting. I kept believing that at some point he would remember. That he would go back to being that boy who sat by my side and told me his dreams. That someday he would look at me and say, "Thanks, Mom, for everything." I held on to that hope like someone guarding an antique locket, taking it out every now and then to remember that it still shined. Until that call came. Tyler, with an animated voice, inviting me to lunch at his house. "I haven't seen you in a long time, Mom. Come over on Saturday. Vanessa is going to cook something special." My heart leaped. I thought the moment had finally arrived. The recognition, the reconciliation, the family I always dreamed of. I spent the whole week preparing. I bought a gift. A set of crystal wine glasses I saw at Macy's that I knew they would like. I did my hair. I chose my best dress, a burgundy one I had sewn myself years ago that always made me feel dignified. I even allowed myself to imagine the scene, the three of us sitting at the table, talking, laughing, being a family again. When I arrived that Saturday, the door was ajar. I walked in, calling out softly, "Tyler? Vanessa?" No one answered, but I heard voices and the noise of movement in the living room. I walked toward it, and that was when I saw the scene that would change everything. The living room was full of new furniture, still with tags and protective plastic. Two uniformed men were assembling a massive sectional. Vanessa was in the center, like an orchestra conductor, pointing out where each piece should go. Tyler was there, watching in silence. And when Vanessa saw me, her face lit up, but not with joy, with something worse, with opportunity. "Oh, perfect. Just in time, Margaret." Vanessa walked toward me with that smile that never quite reached her eyes. "Look at everything we got. Isn't it gorgeous? This sofa is imported from an exclusive showroom downtown. And that coffee table is authentic travertine marble. Tyler and I have been dreaming of redecorating the whole living room for months." I nodded, still processing the scene, searching her enthusiasm for some trace of the special meal that supposedly awaited me. There was no smell of cooking, no table set, only furniture and more furniture, being arranged by strangers who avoided my gaze. "It's very nice," I managed to say, feeling how the weight of the gift in my hands was becoming increasingly absurd. Crystal glasses. As if they needed anything from me. Vanessa kept talking non-stop, listing prices, brands, designers. Every word was a reminder that I didn't belong in this world. $45,000 in total. But it's worth every penny. "Right, babe?" She shot a look at Tyler, who nodded without much conviction. It was then that one of the movers, an older man with a gray mustache, asked the inevitable question. "Who is going to sign the delivery receipt? And we need the payment confirmation to close the order." The silence that followed lasted only 3 seconds, but it felt like an eternity. I saw Vanessa exchange a quick glance with Tyler. He opened his mouth as if to say something, but she was faster. "Oh, look at the mother-in-law there. She's going to pay. She has plenty of money." She said it with such naturalness, with such assurance, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world, as if I had been in on this plan from the beginning. The movers looked at me. The younger one seemed uncomfortable. The older one simply waited for instructions. Tyler still said nothing, his eyes glued to some undefined spot on the floor. And I, Margaret, the woman who had worked 20 years without a break so her son could have a better life, stood there, holding a gift wrapped in shiny paper, feeling the world stop around me. "Excuse me?" My voice came out lower than I intended. Vanessa laughed, that nervous little laugh people use when they know they are crossing a line but decide to do it anyway. "Oh, Margaret, don't act surprised. Tyler told me you have savings, that you kept the money from your husband's life insurance. And we really needed this furniture. The old stuff was hideous. Besides, you're his mother. What mother wouldn't help her son have a nice home?" I felt something break inside me, not with a crash, but with a quiet snap, like a dry twig breaking. I looked at Tyler. I really looked at him, searching his eyes for the boy who used to hug me, the young man who promised to take care of me when I could no longer work. But the only thing I found was cowardice. He averted his gaze toward the window, toward the garden Vanessa liked so much, toward anywhere that wasn't my face. "So, this is the visit you invited me for, Tyler?" This time my voice was firm, almost cold. There was no answer. Only the sound of the movers shifting furniture and the distant ticking of a clock on the wall. Vanessa tried to smooth the situation with her sweetest tone. "Oh, mother-in-law, don't take it the wrong way. It's just that we thought you'd like to contribute. After all, someday, all this will be for your grandchildren." No. Grandchildren who didn't even exist yet, but whom she was already using as emotional currency. The older mover cleared his throat, clearly uncomfortable. "Ma'am, we need to resolve this. We have other deliveries pending." Vanessa extended a folder with papers toward me. "Here is everything. You just have to sign and make the transfer. Tyler can give you the account details." I took the folder. I opened it. I saw the numbers. $45,000 divided into detailed invoices. Sofas, tables, designer lamps, Persian rugs, a complete catalog of luxuries they had chosen without consulting me, assuming I would pay because, after all, what else was I going to do with my money? What other purpose could my life have, if not to serve them? I closed the folder slowly. My hands weren't trembling. That surprised me. I had always imagined that in a moment like this I would break down, that the tears would come uncontrollably, that I would scream or beg. But no. What I felt was a strange calm, almost unnatural, as if something in me had turned off, or perhaps turned on. "I'm not sure." "I understand," I said finally. Vanessa smiled, believing she had won. "I knew you would understand. You're a reasonable woman." Reasonable. That word bounced around in my head. All my life I had been reasonable. Reasonable in accepting double shifts. Reasonable in giving up my own dreams. Reasonable in pretending that the absences, the forgotten dates, the disdain disguised as familiarity didn't hurt. "Where do I sign?" I asked. The older mover pointed to a line at the bottom of the document. I took the pen Vanessa offered me. I held it over the paper for a few seconds that seemed like hours. Images flashed through my mind. Tyler as a child, sleeping while I sewed until dawn. Tyler as a teenager, hugging me after graduation. Tyler as an adult, avoiding my gaze in his own living room. And then I thought about something I had never allowed myself to think. Why do I always have to be the one who yields? Why must my love be measured in sacrifices while theirs is measured in convenience? I could sign that paper. I could transfer the money. I could continue being the reasonable mother, the generous mother-in-law, the woman who lets herself be used because she is afraid of being left alone. Or I could do something different, something I hadn't done in 62 years of life. Choose myself. I handed back the pen without signing. No, the word came out simple, without adornment, without explanations. Vanessa blinked, confused. "What do you mean, no?" I looked at Tyler directly, forcing him to hold my gaze even though he wanted to escape. "I'm not going to pay for furniture I didn't choose, for a house where I am clearly not welcome, invited under false pretenses." His face went pale. Vanessa let out an uncomfortable laugh, the kind that sounds more like a defense mechanism than genuine humor. "Margaret, don't be dramatic. Of course you're welcome. You're Tyler's mother. This is just a misunderstanding." But I wasn't listening to her words anymore. I was listening to my son's silence. That deafening silence that screamed louder than 1,000 words. He was still there, standing like a statue, not defending me, not intervening, doing absolutely nothing other than wishing he were somewhere else. The older mover cleared his throat again. "Ladies, we really need to resolve this. If there is no payment confirmation, we'll have to take the furniture back." Vanessa turned toward him sharply. "Wait outside. This is a family matter." The two men exchanged looks and walked out toward the front yard, clearly relieved to escape the tension saturating the air. As soon as the door closed, Vanessa dropped the mask of kindness. Her voice became sharp, cutting. "You can't do this to us. We already signed the contract with the store. They're going to charge us a huge restocking fee if we return everything." I looked at her without blinking. "Then perhaps you should have consulted me before assuming I would fund your $45,000 whim." Tyler finally spoke. His voice sounded tired, defeated. "Mom, please, don't complicate things. You know we have a lot of expenses. The business is going through a rough patch, and—" I laughed. It was a short, dry laugh, devoid of joy. "The business is bad? The same business I lent you $15,000 for 3 years ago? The same $15,000 that, according to you, you had already recouped?" I saw him swallow hard. Vanessa intervened quickly. That's different. That was an investment in your son's future. This is just helping us have a dignified home. Dignified. Another word that hit me like a slap. I looked around that spacious living room with its wide windows, its high ceiling, its stainless steel open-concept kitchen visible in the background. I thought about my little two-bedroom apartment in the working-class neighborhood, where the ceiling had water stains I could never completely repair, where the sewing machine took up half the living room, and I thought about all the times I had considered that place undignified, not good enough, while I worked myself to exhaustion so Tyler could have more. But now, standing in the middle of their magazine-ready living room, I realized something. My home, with all its imperfections, had something this place would never have. Honesty. Do you know what the saddest part of all this is, Tyler? My voice cracked slightly, but I continued. It's not the money. It's not the furniture. It's that you invited me with lies. You made me believe you wanted to see me, that you missed your mother, when in reality, you only needed my wallet. He opened his mouth to protest, but I stopped him with a gesture of my hand. No. I've heard enough. Or rather, I've heard enough silence. I headed toward the door, with the gift still in my hands. Vanessa blocked my path. You can't just leave like this. We have to resolve this. Those men are waiting outside. I stepped around her without touching her. Then resolve it yourselves. You're adults. You'll find a way. I opened the door and walked out into the front yard. The two movers were by their truck, smoking cigarettes and talking quietly. Upon seeing me, they quickly put out their cigarettes. Ma'am, the older one said, is everything sorted? I shook my head. I am not paying for that merchandise. I'm sorry for the inconvenience, but I suggest you speak directly with the homeowners. The younger one looked relieved. The older one simply nodded with understanding. Understood, ma'am. We've seen it all in this job. Don't worry. I walked toward the street where I had parked my old sedan. I heard the house door fly open violently behind me. Mom, wait. It was Tyler, finally moving, finally speaking up. I stopped, but I didn't turn around. I didn't want him to see the tears that were already beginning to form in my eyes. You can't leave me like this. Vanessa is right. You're my mother. You're supposed to support me. I turned around slowly. I supported you for 20 years, Tyler. I supported you when your father died, and we didn't know how we were going to survive the next month. I supported you when all the other kids had two parents at school ceremonies, and you only had me. I supported you when you needed money for your business, when you needed advice, when you needed someone to believe in you, even when you didn't believe in yourself. And do you know what? Never, not once, did I throw it in your face. I never made you feel like you owed me anything, because that is a mother's love. It doesn't carry invoices. It doesn't attach conditions. My voice rose without me being able to control it. But this, Tyler, this isn't love. This is abuse disguised as family obligation. And I am too old to keep pretending I don't see the difference. Vanessa had come out as well and was standing in the doorway, arms crossed. You are selfish, Margaret. A selfish woman who only thinks of herself. I looked at her with a calm that surprised even me. You're right, Vanessa. I am selfish. It's the first time in 62 years that I am, and do you know what? It feels liberating. I got into my car. My hands were shaking as I searched for the keys in my purse. Tyler approached the window. Mom, please. We can talk about this. Come inside. We'll have a coffee and… No, Tyler. Not anymore. I started the engine. In the rearview mirror, I saw Vanessa screaming something at the movers, gesturing exaggeratedly. I saw Tyler put his hands to his head, pacing in circles like a caged animal, and I saw how that perfect world they had built on my sacrifices was beginning to wobble. I drove for 20 minutes without a fixed destination, just getting away from that house, from that humiliation, from that farce. I ended up parking in front of a small park I used to visit with Tyler when he was a boy. We used to sit on those same benches to eat ice cream when I could afford it. I turned off the engine and finally let the tears flow. I cried for the son I had lost. Not to death, but to something worse. Entitlement and indifference cultivated by years of comfort. I cried for the woman I had been, always giving, always sacrificing, always believing that was enough to keep the love alive. But amidst the tears, something else began to grow. a seed of clarity that had been buried under layers of maternal guilt and self-imposed obligation. I wiped my eyes and took out my phone. I had 3 missed calls from Tyler and 2 text messages from Vanessa. I ignored them. Instead, I dialed another number. My brother Robert, a lawyer, someone who had always warned me about maintaining healthy boundaries, but whom I had never wanted to listen to. "Margaret? What a surprise. Is everything okay?" His voice sounded genuinely happy to hear me. I almost broke down again, but I held firm. "Robert, I need your help. And I need you not to judge me for what I'm going to ask you." There was a pause. "I would never judge you. Tell me what you need." I took a deep breath. "I need you to review all the legal documents where Tyler appears as a beneficiary. The joint savings account, the deed to my condo, everything. And I need to know exactly what my rights are regarding the money I lent him for his business." Robert didn't say anything for a few seconds. Then his voice sounded serious, professional. "What happened, Margaret? What happened is that I finally opened my eyes. Can you help me or not? I'm heading to your place right now. Put on a pot of coffee. We're going to go over everything." Robert arrived at my apartment 40 minutes later, carrying a worn leather briefcase and that serious expression he adopted when he was in work mode. He didn't ask unnecessary questions. He simply sat at my small dining table, accepted the coffee I poured him, and opened his laptop. "Show me everything," he said. I took out the metal box where I kept my important documents. Deeds, contracts, bank statements, the promissory note Tyler had signed when I lent him the $15,000 for his business. Robert reviewed every paper with the meticulousness of a surgeon. Occasionally, he would jot something down in his notebook, frown, and read it again. The silence between us was comfortable, the kind that only exists between siblings who have known each other forever. Finally, after almost an hour, he closed the last folder and looked me directly in the eyes. "Margaret, legally, you are in a very solid position. The joint savings account can be modified at any time. The money in there comes from your husband's life insurance and your own savings. Tyler never deposited a cent in there. You only put him as a co-owner in case something happened to you. That can be changed today." I nodded, feeling my heart beat faster. "And the loan?" Robert smiled ironically. "That is the most interesting detail. Tyler signed a promissory note with a repayment term of 5 years. 3 have already passed. According to this document, he should have started paying you monthly 6 months ago. Has he paid anything?" I shook my head. "He told me the business was expanding and that he needed to reinvest the profits. I told him there was no rush." "Well, legally, there is," Robert said, tapping the document gently with his index finger. "This note is enforceable. You can demand full payment with interest if you consider there is a breach. And believe me, there is a clear breach." I stared at that paper, at Tyler's signature at the bottom of the document. A signature he had traced at this very table 3 years ago, promising me that everything would be fine, asking me to trust him. "What about my apartment?" I asked anxiously. "Your apartment is solely in your name. Tyler appears as the beneficiary in your will, but you can change that whenever you want, too. It's your property, Margaret. Yours. No one can take it from you or force you to leave it to someone you don't want to." I felt something loosen in my chest. For years I had carried the idea that everything I had, somehow, already belonged to Tyler, that I was just a temporary administrator of resources that would eventually be his. But it wasn't like that. It had never been like that. Robert closed his laptop and took my hand. "Sis, what did they do to you?" And then I told him everything. Every detail of that morning, the fake invitation, the $45,000 furniture, the humiliation in front of strangers, Tyler's complicit silence. Robert listened without interrupting, but I saw his jaw tighten with every word. When I finished, he stood up and walked to the window. "I should have insisted more. Years ago, I told you Tyler was becoming dependent, that Vanessa was changing him, but you always defended him." "He was my son," I whispered. "He is still your son, but that doesn't give him the right to treat you like a walking ATM." He turned toward me with determination. "What do you want to do, Margaret? Because I can help you, but I need to know how far you want to go." I closed my eyes. I thought about all the options. I could forgive, forget, go back to being the compliant mother. I could pretend nothing had happened and wait for Tyler to eventually apologize. Or I could do something I had never done. Establish real boundaries, real consequences. I want you to remove Tyler's name from the joint savings account. Today, if possible. And I want you to prepare a formal demand for payment of the loan. He has 30 days to pay me, or reach a payment agreement, and I want to modify my will. Robert nodded slowly. Are you sure? This is going to create a huge conflict. The conflict already exists, Robert. It's just that I was the only one pretending not to see it. My brother took out his phone. Give me an hour. I'm going to make some calls. The bank is about to close, but I have a contact who can help us, and I can draft the documents tonight. While Robert made his calls in the living room, I sat in my small sewing studio. The machine was still there, in the same spot where it had been for 20 years. I ran my fingers over the metal surface, feeling every scratch, every mark of use. This machine had fed Tyler. It had paid for his education. It had built his future, and now it was going to help me build mine. My phone vibrated. Another message from Tyler. Mom, please answer. We need to talk. Vanessa is very upset. The store is threatening to sue us. You can't do this to us. I read the message 3 times. You can't do this to us. As if I were the aggressor. As if setting a boundary were an act of violence. I didn't reply. Instead, I opened a conversation with my friend Linda, someone I had neglected in recent years by always being available for Tyler. Linda, do you have time for coffee tomorrow? I need to talk to someone. Her reply came in seconds. Finally, I thought you had forgotten about me. Of course. See you tomorrow at 10 at the usual diner. Is everything okay? Now it is, I typed. And it was true. For the first time in a long time, I felt like things were going to be okay. Not easy, but okay. Robert came back with a triumphant smile. Done. Tomorrow at 9 in the morning we have an appointment at the bank. They are going to process the change of ownership of the account, and I already started drafting the payment demand. Do you want to review it before I send it? I read the document he showed me on his laptop. It was formal, cold, legal, no emotions. Only facts, dates, amounts, breached clauses. It's perfect, I said. When do we send it? Whenever you say. It can be by certified mail, or I can deliver it personally. You decide. I thought about Tyler receiving that document, about his face of surprise, perhaps indignation. I thought about Vanessa calling me dramatic, exaggerated, cruel. And I thought about something else, that none of those reactions were going to change my mind. Send it tomorrow afternoon, after we leave the bank. Robert closed his laptop. I'm proud of you, sister. I know this isn't easy. It isn't, I admitted. But continuing as I wasn't easy either. It was just familiar. That night, after Robert left, I lay awake staring at my bedroom ceiling. My phone wouldn't stop vibrating with messages. Tyler had gone from pleading to indignation. Mom, this is ridiculous. Just because you didn't sign some papers, now you're going to ignore us? You're unbelievable. After everything we've done for you. I read that last message several times. Everything we've done for you. I laughed alone in the dark. What exactly had they done? Invited me occasionally to their house? Allowed me to be part of their lives when it suited them? Called me only when they needed something? I didn't reply. I turned off the phone and put it in a drawer. The next day, Robert picked me up early. At the bank, the process was surprisingly simple. The branch manager, a middle-aged man who knew my history as a longtime client, processed the change without asking uncomfortable questions. Miss Margaret, effective immediately. You are the sole owner of this account, Mr. Tyler no longer has access nor appears as a beneficiary. I signed the documents with a steady hand. $42,000. That was what remained of my husband's insurance and my own savings. Money I had kept thinking it would be for Tyler's emergencies, to help him when he needed it. But now I understood that the emergency was mine. The emergency was rescuing myself. We left the bank just as my phone, which I had turned back on, began to ring. It was Tyler. I looked at the screen, but I didn't answer. Robert watched me. You're not going to answer? Not now, I said. Now I'm going to have that coffee with Linda, and then I'm going to go back to my house, to my shop, and I'm going to do something I haven't done in years. Sew something for myself. Coffee with Linda was like breathing again after being underwater for too long. She listened without interrupting, nodding at the right moments, squeezing my hand when my voice cracked. When I finished telling her everything, she leaned back in her chair and let out a long sigh. Margaret, I've been waiting 3 years for you to realize this. 3 years watching you consume yourself, trying to please someone who only sees you as a resource. Her words hurt because they were true. But he's my son, Linda. How is a mother supposed to close the door on her own son? She took her coffee cup, thoughtful. You're not closing any door. You're putting a deadbolt on it so they don't come in to rob you. There is a huge difference. She was right, as always. Linda was a widow too, had raised 2 children alone, and both now visited her every week, called her daily, genuinely included her in their lives. Not out of obligation, but out of real love. Do you know what the saddest thing is? I told her. That I believed I was building an unbreakable bond with Tyler. I thought so much sacrifice would create a bond of gratitude, of deep love, but I only created dependence. And when I stopped being useful in the way he wanted, I stopped mattering. Linda shook her head. You didn't stop being useful. You stopped being exploitable. And that scared them. We spent 2 hours in that diner, planning simple things I had abandoned because I was always on call for Tyler. A short trip to the coast that Linda had been proposing for years. Taking up the dance classes I had quit because Saturday afternoons were when Tyler sometimes called. Small things that, when added up, showed how much of myself I had sacrificed on the altar of motherhood. When I returned home, I found Tyler sitting on the steps of my building. He looked terrible. Deep circles under his eyes, wrinkled clothes, messy hair. He stood up when he saw me arrive. Mom, thank God, I've been calling you all day. I walked past him toward the building door. I know. I saw the calls. And you didn't think to answer? I'm desperate. The store is threatening us with a lawsuit. Vanessa won't stop crying. Everything is a disaster. I paused with the key in the lock. Tyler, at any point today did you ask yourself how I am? How I felt yesterday when I was used as an ATM without my consent? He blinked, confused, as if the question were incomprehensible. Mom, this is serious. They can sue us for breach of contract. Do you understand the gravity? I understand the gravity perfectly. What I don't understand is why that gravity has to be my responsibility. I opened the door. Tyler followed me inside. In my apartment, he dropped onto the sofa with dramatic despair. I can't believe you're doing this to me. I'm your son, your only son. I sat across from him, keeping my distance. Exactly why it hurts so much, Tyler. Because you're not a stranger who failed me. You are the person for whom I sacrificed everything, and you treated me worse than a stranger. It was Vanessa's idea, he said quickly. She thought you wouldn't mind helping us. I told her we should talk to you first, but she insisted it would be a pleasant surprise. I stared at him. Don't lie to me. Not now. You had 1,000 opportunities to stop her yesterday, to say, no, my mother is not going to pay for this without being consulted. But you didn't say anything. You stood there, silent, waiting for me to simply cave like I always have. Tyler ran his hands over his face. I'm under a lot of pressure. Mom, the business isn't going as well as we pretend. Vanessa has high expectations. Her parents judge us constantly. I need to keep up appearances. And what am I in that equation? The emergency fund to keep up appearances? My voice rose without my control. I worked 20 years, Tyler. 20 years of double shifts, of giving up vacations, new clothes, any luxury, so you could have opportunities. And now it turns out all that was so you could buy luxury sofas to impress your wife's parents. A tense silence fell. Tyler looked at the floor. Finally, he spoke, his voice lower. I know I made a mistake. I'm sorry. But Mom, I need your help. You've always helped me. Why is it different now? Because yesterday something broke, Tyler. Something I don't know if can be repaired. It wasn't just the money. It was the deception. It was the lack of respect. It was realizing that to you, I am a means, not a person. He looked up, and for the first time, I saw something resembling genuine comprehension in his eyes. Or perhaps it was just fear. "What do you want me to do? Tell me what you want, and I'll do it." I took a deep breath. "I want you to return the money I lent you 3 years ago. The $15,000. You have 30 days to pay it or to reach a realistic payment agreement." His face went pale. "What? Mom, I don't have that money right now. If I had it, I wouldn't be in this situation." "Then you'll have to find a way. Just like I found a way to work double shifts to pay for your college. Just like I found a way to lend you that money when no one else believed in your business. Now it's your turn to find a way." Tyler stood up abruptly. "This is revenge. You're punishing me for a mistake." "No, Tyler. This is justice. And if to you justice feels like punishment, maybe you should reflect on that." My phone dinged. It was a text from Robert. "Demand for payment sent by certified mail. He will receive it officially tomorrow." Tyler saw my expression and understood. "You already made it official, didn't you? You went to lawyers." "I went to my brother, who happens to be a lawyer." "Yes." He laughed without humor. "Unbelievable. My own mother suing me." "I am not suing you. I am collecting a legitimate loan that you signed for and have defaulted on. There is a difference." Tyler walked toward the door. Before leaving, he turned one last time. "Vanessa was right about you. She always said you played the victim, the martyr. But it turns out you're as selfish as anyone." His words were meant to hurt me, but curiously, they didn't succeed. Because in that moment I realized something fundamental. His approval was no longer necessary for my peace of mind. If taking care of myself after decades of taking care of you is selfishness, then I accept the title with pride. He slammed the door harder than necessary. I stood alone in my apartment, in the silence that followed his exit. I didn't cry. I had no more tears for that version of Tyler. The version I had built in my mind, the grateful and loving son, didn't exist. Maybe he never existed, and I had to make peace with that. My phone rang again. This time it was an unknown number. I hesitated before answering. "Miss Margaret?" It was a female voice I didn't recognize. "Yes, who is calling?" "This is Patricia, from Eleganza Furniture. I'm sorry to bother you. We got your number through your son. He indicated that you had agreed to pay for the merchandise delivered yesterday, but we have a problem with the payment." I took a deep breath. "Patricia, I'm sorry you are in the middle of this, but I never agreed to pay for any merchandise. My son and his wife made that purchase without consulting me. I have no legal obligation to your store." There was a pause. "I understand. It's just that they insisted very much that you had accepted covering the cost. They even gave us your name and phone number as a payment reference. Well, they lied to you, and I suggest you proceed with whatever legal measures correspond against the true buyers." "I did not sign any document with your company." Patricia sighed. "I understand, ma'am. Sorry for the bother. We will proceed with the recovery of the merchandise then. Do what you have to do. Good afternoon." I hung up. Immediately after, I received 5 calls in a row from Vanessa. I didn't answer any. Then the texts arrived, each one more hysterical than the last. "Margaret, what did you tell the store? Now they want to take everything back. You are a horrible person. How can you do this to your own son? Tyler is devastated because of you. I hope you can sleep peacefully knowing the damage you caused." I read every message without replying. Then I blocked her number. For the first time in years, I felt light, as if I had been carrying an invisible weight that I had finally dropped. That night, for the first time since it all began, I slept deeply. No nightmares, no guilt, only the comforting silence of a clear conscience. The next morning I woke up with a mental clarity I hadn't experienced in years. The sun was coming through my bedroom window, illuminating the small sewing area that had been my refuge for decades. I made myself a quiet coffee, without rushing, without the knot in my stomach that usually accompanied me whenever I thought of Tyler. I was starting to eat breakfast when I heard insistent banging on my door. I looked at the clock, 7:30 in the morning. I knew who it was before opening. Tyler and Vanessa were in the hallway. She had eyes swollen from crying. He looked like he hadn't slept all night. "Mom, thank God you're here." Tyler tried to enter, but I blocked the entrance with my body. "What do you want?" Vanessa practically pushed me. "What do we want? Are you seriously asking that? The store people are coming today at 10 to take all the furniture. They're going to leave the house empty. Do you have any idea of the humiliation? I looked at her without blinking. Yes, I have a pretty clear idea of what humiliation is. I experienced it 2 days ago in your living room. Tyler intervened, trying to sound reasonable. Mom, I know we messed up. I admit it. But this has gotten out of control. Vanessa spoke to her parents and they are furious. They say we made them look bad. Her father knows important people, and this could affect my business. Then perhaps you should have thought about that before trying to scam me, I said calmly. Vanessa exploded. It wasn't a scam. You're his mother. Mothers are supposed to help their children unconditionally. Mothers do help unconditionally. But you didn't ask for help. You set a trap for me. There is a huge difference between asking and manipulating. Tyler rubbed his temples. Please, Mom, just call the store. Tell them you're going to pay. We can make a payment plan, whatever, but don't let them humiliate us like this. No. The word came out firm, definitive. You created this problem. You solve it. Vanessa took a step toward me, her voice trembling with rage. You know what? You're a bitter old woman who can't stand seeing her son happy. You've always controlled him with your victimization and your sacrifices, but now that he has a real life, a real wife, you can't stand it. Something inside me hardened. Vanessa, I am 62 years old. I have worked since I was 14. I have buried a husband. I have raised a son alone. I have survived economic crises, illnesses, losses. I don't need life lessons from someone who has never had to work a hard day in her existence. Her face turned red. How dare you? I dare, because I finally understood that I have nothing to lose that is worth keeping at the cost of my dignity. Tyler tried one last plea. Mom, I beg you, just this once. After this, I will never ask you for anything again. I looked him in the eyes, searching for some trace of the boy he had been. Tyler, you have told me just this once for the last 5 years. When you needed money for the business, when you needed me to co-sign your car loan, when Vanessa wanted that trip to Europe and you couldn't pay for it. It is always just this once, but it is never the last time. This is different, he insisted desperately. No, it isn't. It is exactly the same. And this time my answer is no. Vanessa pulled Tyler by the arm. Let's go. It's useless talking to her. She is a heartless, selfish woman. I let them go. I closed the door and leaned against it, breathing deeply. My hands were shaking slightly, not from fear, but from adrenaline. I had held my ground. I hadn't caved, and the world hadn't ended. At 9:30 my phone rang. It was Linda. How are you? I saw Tyler and Vanessa leaving your building a while ago. They looked furious. I'm fine. Better than I thought I would be. You need company. I smiled. I always need your company. Coffee. I'm coming over. Linda arrived with pastries and that calming energy that only true friends have. We sat in my small living room while I told her the details of the morning visit. They are desperate, Linda observed, and they are probably going to intensify the pressure. Let them do it. I already made my decision. I'm glad to hear you so firm. But get ready. Margaret, when people are used to you giving in, your resistance makes them irrational. She was right. At 10 o'clock sharp, my phone began to ring non-stop. It was Tyler, calling again and again. Finally, I answered. What is it? The movers are here. They are packing everything. Vanessa is crying. The neighbors are watching through the windows. Mom, please, this is a nightmare. I heard background noise. Male voices giving instructions. The sound of furniture being moved. Tyler, I didn't create this nightmare. You did. But you can stop it. His voice cracked. You just have to make one call. Just one and all this ends. You're right. I could stop it. But I'm not going to. Because if I do, I will be teaching you that manipulating me works. That humiliating me has a reward. And I can't live like that anymore. I heard him shout something to Vanessa. Then his voice returned to the phone, more desperate. Mom, I beg you, Vanessa is hysterical. She says her parents are coming, and when they see the empty house, it's going to be the end. Her father can ruin my business with a single call. Then perhaps Vanessa should have thought about that before spending $45,000 she didn't have. I know we messed up, he shouted. How many times do I have to say it? I'm sorry, that's what you want to hear. I don't want to hear apologies forced by desperation, Tyler. I want to see real changes. And that takes time. We don't have time. The furniture is going out the door right now. There was a loud noise, as if something fell. Then I heard Vanessa's shrill voice screaming, "Careful with the table! That marble cost $6,000. One of the movers responded with a tired voice. "Ma'am, we cannot be responsible for items during recovery. Should have thought of that before defaulting." The mover's comment must have been the straw that broke the camel's back. Vanessa began to scream hysterically. "This is that miserable old woman's fault. It's all her fault. She ruined our lives." Tyler was trying to calm her, but she was completely out of control. "Call her. Tell her she's a bad mother. Tell her I hope we never see her again." I heard all this through the phone. Linda looked at me with concern, but I kept calm. "Tyler," I said clearly, "are you still there?" "Yes," he replied with a hoarse voice. "Listen to me well. I'm going to hang up now, and I don't want you to call me until you are ready to have a real conversation. Not about money, not about furniture, about respect and boundaries. When you are ready for that conversation, I'll be here." "Mom, wait." I hung up. My hand was surprisingly steady. Linda whistled low. That was powerful. It was necessary. Half an hour later, I received a text message from a number I didn't recognize. I opened it and saw a photo. It was Tyler's living room, completely empty. Only the indentations on the floor remained where the furniture had been. The message said, "Happy now? This is what you did to your son." I didn't reply. I blocked the number. A few minutes later, another message from another unknown number. Another photo, this time of Vanessa, sitting on the floor of that empty room, crying. "Look what you caused. A real mother would never do this." I blocked that number too. Linda took the phone from my hands. "Enough. You don't need to see more. They are trying to break me," I said with a neutral voice. "I know, but they aren't going to succeed. Because you aren't the same woman you were 3 days ago." She was right. Something fundamental had changed in me. The fear of losing Tyler, that fear that had controlled me for years, no longer had the same power. Because I realized something. I had already lost him. I lost him the moment he stopped seeing me as his mother and started seeing me as a resource. And I couldn't lose what didn't exist anymore. 3 days of absolute silence passed. 3 days in which my phone didn't ring with calls from Tyler. 3 days in which a strange peace began to settle in. Almost unsettling because it was so unusual. Linda visited me daily, making sure I didn't waver. Robert called me every night to check that I was okay. And I, for the first time in decades, was rediscovering who Margaret was without the constant weight of Tyler's expectations. I picked up sewing projects I had abandoned. I reorganized my studio. I even dared to buy myself expensive fabric, the kind I had always considered an unnecessary luxury, and started designing a dress for myself. Emerald green, elegant, the kind a woman wears when she finally decides she deserves beautiful things. But I knew the silence wouldn't last, and I was right. On the 4th day, a Friday afternoon, I heard raised voices in my building's hallway. I immediately recognized Vanessa's shrill tone. I peered through the peephole and saw a scene that froze my blood. Tyler, Vanessa, and 2 older people, whom I assumed were her parents, were in front of my door. Vanessa's father, a heavy-set man in an expensive suit, was banging on my door forcefully. "Miss Margaret, open this door immediately. We need to talk about the damage you have caused our family." I didn't open it. Instead, I called Robert. "They're here, Tyler, Vanessa, and her parents. They're causing a scene in the hallway. Don't open the door. I'm on my way. If they continue disturbing you, call the police." The banging continued, getting louder. Vanessa's father was shouting barely veiled threats. "You don't know who you messed with. I know people. I can make your life hell." My neighbor from the apartment next door, Mrs. Rodriguez, came out to see what was happening. "What is all this racket? There are elderly people living here. You have to leave, or I'll call security." Vanessa turned toward her. "This is not your problem. We are trying to speak with a relative who owes us money." Mrs. Rodriguez looked at me through the peephole, as if she knew I was watching. "Margaret is a good neighbor. She's lived here quietly for years. You are the ones causing problems. Leave, or I'm calling the cops." Vanessa's father tried to intimidate her. "Lady, I suggest you mind your own business." But Mrs. Rodriguez didn't back down. She pulled out her phone. "I'm calling the police right now." Tyler finally spoke, voice tired. "Dad, leave it. Let's go. This isn't working." But Vanessa's father was in full attack mode. "No. This woman needs to learn that she cannot treat my daughter like this. Vanessa has been crying for days because of her selfishness." Finally, I opened the door. But not completely. Just enough for them to see me, with the security chain on. "Sir, I don't know who you are, but you are in my building, in front of my door, threatening me. I have the right to call the police." He looked at me with disdain. "I am Richard Sterling, and my family is not accustomed to being treated this way. You owe my daughter an apology and compensation." "I owe your daughter nothing, and I definitely owe you nothing." Vanessa stepped forward, eyes red from crying. "Margaret, please. My parents came from out of town just to talk to you. At least listen to them. I have nothing to hear, and you have 30 seconds to leave before I call the police." Vanessa's mother, who until now had remained silent, spoke with an affected voice. "We raised Vanessa with values, with respect for family. We never imagined her mother-in-law would be such a cruel person." Something in her tone, that moral superiority disguised as disappointment, made me react. I undid the chain and opened the door completely. "You want to talk about values? About respect for family? Perfect, let's talk." The four of them entered my small apartment. The contrast between their expensive clothes and my modest home was evident. I saw how Vanessa's mother looked around with barely concealed disdain. I sat in my sewing chair. I didn't offer them a seat. They remained standing, uncomfortable. "You," I began, looking at Vanessa's parents, "raised a daughter who believes she can spend $45,000 without consulting the person who will supposedly pay the bill. And now you come to my house to demand that I pay for your failed education." Vanessa's mother gasped, offended. "How dare you?" "I dare because this is my house. And here, truths are spoken." I turned toward Tyler. "You, my son, to whom I gave everything, brought me here under false pretenses to use me. You didn't ask for help. You set a trap, and when I refused to fall into it, instead of apologizing, you attacked me." Tyler opened his mouth, but I stopped him. "No. You've spoken enough during 3 days of threatening messages. Now it's my turn." I looked at Vanessa. "And you who come from a family with money, who has never worked a real day in your life, had the nerve to say in front of strangers that I had plenty of money. As if my money, earned with my own hands, was yours by right." Richard Sterling took a step forward. "Enough. We didn't come here to be insulted. Then leave. No one invited you." His face turned red with anger. "You don't know who you are talking to. I can make Tyler lose important contracts. I can ruin his business with a single call." I stared at him. "Go ahead. Make your call. Because if Tyler's business depends on you holding him hostage, then it isn't a real business. It's a dependency." Tyler paled. "Mom, don't provoke him. Please." "Provoke him? Tyler, that man is in my house threatening my son, and you want me to stay silent?" Robert arrived at that moment. He walked in without knocking. He saw the scene, and his expression hardened. "What is going on here?" Richard turned toward him. "And who are you?" "Robert Vance, attorney at law and Margaret's brother. And you are violating several laws right now. Trespassing, harassment, threats." Richard laughed sarcastically. "Attorney? For what firm?" "Probably one of those ambulance chasers working out of a strip mall." Robert pulled out his business card and handed it to him. "Vance and Associates, 30 years of experience in civil and family law. Do you want me to continue, or do you prefer to leave before this gets really ugly?" Vanessa's mother pulled her husband by the arm. "Richard, let's go. This is ridiculous." But Vanessa wasn't ready to leave. She planted herself in front of me, trembling with rage. "This is all your fault. You ruined my marriage. You ruined my house. You ruined my life." "I didn't ruin anything, Vanessa. I just stopped funding your fantasy." Vanessa turned toward Tyler with pleading eyes. "Are you going to let her speak to me like that? Are you going to allow your mother to disrespect me?" Tyler looked at the floor, as he always did when he had to choose. Vanessa grabbed his arm, shaking him. "Tyler, say something! Defend me!" He looked up, and for the first time, I saw tears in his eyes. "I can't anymore, Vanessa. I can't go on with this." She recoiled as if slapped. "What does that mean?" "It means I'm tired. Tired of the demands. Tired of pretending we have a standard of living we can't sustain. Tired of fighting with my mother over money," Richard exploded. "Are you blaming my daughter? She left her comfortable life to marry you. We gave her everything. And this is how you pay us back?" Robert intervened with a firm voice. "Mr. Sterling, you have 10 seconds to leave this apartment or I will call the police. 1, 2, 3, this isn't over," Richard threatened as his wife pushed him toward the door. "I have contacts. I'm going to ruin you, Margaret. You and your son." Vanessa followed him, crying dramatically. "This is the end, Tyler. The end of everything." Tyler stayed a few seconds longer, looking at me with an expression I couldn't decipher. "Are you happy now, Mom? This is what you wanted." My voice came out quiet, almost sad. What I wanted was respect. What I wanted was to be treated like a person, not an ATM. If that destroyed your perfect world, then that world was built on rotten foundations from the start. He turned around and left without saying anything else. After they left, I let myself fall into my chair. My legs were shaking, not from fear but from accumulated adrenaline. Robert locked the door and sat across from me. "Margaret, are you okay?" I nodded slowly. "Yes, surprisingly, I am okay. That man, Richard, is a bully. People like him think money and contacts give them the right to trample others. But don't worry. If he tries anything, we'll face him legally." I took his hand. "Thanks, Robert, for being here, for not judging me, for supporting me when I decided to do something everyone considers unforgivable, putting myself first." He squeezed my hand. "Sis, what was unforgivable was how they treated you. You only responded with the dignity you should have always had." He stayed with me until late, making sure I was calm. Before leaving, he left me a locksmith's number. "Change the locks tomorrow, just in case Tyler has keys. You can't trust that he'll respect your space anymore." He was right. The next day, a locksmith came and changed the whole lock. Seeing those new keys in my hand was symbolic. One door closing, another opening. During the following week, my life took on a different rhythm. I got up every morning without the weight of guilt. I ate breakfast in peace, without obsessively checking my phone expecting messages from Tyler. I resumed my routine in the sewing shop with renewed energy. I even accepted 2 new commissions that I would have previously rejected to be available for family emergencies that were never really emergencies. Linda dropped by on a Tuesday afternoon and found my apartment transformed. I had moved furniture. I had hung new terracotta curtains that made the light enter differently, warmer. "This place looks different," Linda observed with a smile. "You look different. I feel different, as if I had been living in a small version of myself, and finally I can breathe." We sat with tea and cookies she had brought. "Have you heard anything from Tyler?" I shook my head. "Nothing. And strangely, it doesn't hurt as much as I thought it would. I think I've been mourning the son I thought I had for so long that when I finally saw who he really was, the grieving was already done." Linda nodded understandingly. "And the loan?" "The legal documents. Robert sent the formal notice. Tyler has until the end of the month to respond. I don't think he'll pay. Honestly, it will probably end in a long-term payment agreement, or I'll have to accept a partial loss. But it's not about the money anymore. It's about the principle." "And if he never speaks to you again?" The question hung in the air. It was the one I had asked myself on sleepless nights. "Then I'll learn to live with that. Because the alternative is going back to being who I was. A woman who annuls herself to maintain a relationship that only exists when it is convenient for the other person. And I can't be that woman anymore." It was killing me slowly. Days turned into weeks. I turned 63 in privacy, with Linda, Robert, and some friends from the shop whom I had neglected. It was a small but genuine celebration, full of laughter and real conversations. No one mentioned Tyler, although everyone knew. Instead, we talked about future plans. Linda insisted on the trip to the coast we had been postponing for years. "No more excuses, Margaret. I booked a cabin for 2 weeks in April. You and I, the ocean, good books, and better wine." The idea filled me with an excitement I hadn't felt in years. "Okay, let's go." Robert surprised me with an unexpected gift. I opened an investment account in your name. With part of your savings, if you authorize me, we can make that money work for you. So you have security in your old age without depending on anyone. I was moved to tears. No one had ever thought about my future that way. Well, it's about time someone did. And that someone is you. I started attending a community sewing group that met on Thursdays at the neighborhood cultural center. I met other women, each with her stories, her wounds, her reconstructions. One of them, Sonia, was a recent widow navigating the pain of losing her life partner. Another, Samantha, had left an abusive marriage after 20 years and was learning to be independent. Sharing with them reminded me of something fundamental. I wasn't alone. The pain, the reconstruction, the courage to choose oneself was a path many had walked before me. One afternoon, while I was sewing by the window, I realized that a whole month had passed without crying for Tyler. A month without feeling that devastating emptiness. In its place, I had started to feel something new. Curiosity about my own life. What else could I do? What else did I want to experience? Who was Margaret without the role of selfless mother? I started making lists. Small things I had always wanted to do but eternally postponed. Take painting classes, learn to swim, visit that textile art museum that had opened in the capital, read all the books piled up on my shelf. Simple things that recovered the pleasure of living for myself. I also made an important decision. I hired an accountant to organize my personal finances. For the first time in my life, I had a clear picture of my economic situation. I wasn't rich, but I wasn't in the precariousness I had always feared either. With what I had saved, with my late husband's small pension, and with the income from my sewing, I could live modestly, but with dignity. The accountant, a young and efficient woman also named Linda, helped me create a realistic budget. Miss Margaret, you have been very prudent with your money. You have enough to live comfortably if you don't make unplanned extraordinary expenses. How about a trip to the coast? I asked with a smile. She reviewed the numbers. Perfectly feasible. In fact, you should allow yourself small luxuries occasionally. You've worked all your life. You deserve to enjoy it. That word, deserve. How long had it been since I believed I deserved it? One Saturday morning, 2 months after the furniture incident, I was at the market buying vegetables when I saw Vanessa. She saw me too. For a second, our gazes crossed. I saw her expression go from surprise to disdain. I waited for her to come over and make a scene, but she didn't. She simply looked away and kept walking in the opposite direction. Something in that gesture confirmed I had done the right thing. There was no way back with people who hate you for setting boundaries. The emerald green dress I had started weeks ago was finally finished. I tried it on in front of the mirror and almost didn't recognize the woman looking back. It wasn't just the dress, although it was beautiful. It was something in my posture, in my expression, a firmness that hadn't been there before. I wore that dress to go out to dinner with Linda at a restaurant I had always wanted to visit, but considered too expensive. We ordered wine, we ordered dessert, we laughed until our stomachs hurt. And when I paid the bill without guilt, without anxiety, without calculating how many hours of work that expense represented, I knew something fundamental had changed in me. Here's to you, Linda said, raising her glass. To the bravest woman I know. I'm not brave, I replied. I'm just tired of being afraid. That is exactly what bravery is. Walking back home that night, I walked through the streets of my neighborhood with a sense of belonging I had lost without realizing it. This was my place. These were my streets. This was my life. And for the first time in decades, it was enough. I didn't need Tyler's validation. I didn't need to be the perfect mother who sacrifices everything. I could simply be Margaret, imperfect, sometimes selfish, but finally whole. My phone vibrated with a message. For a second, my heart raced thinking it might be Tyler. But it was Robert. The loan deadline is tomorrow. Do you want me to proceed with legal action if there is no response? I thought about it for the rest of the walk home. I thought about Tyler, about what it would be like to legally force him to pay. I thought about the consequences, the prolonged conflict, the impossibility of future reconciliation. And then I thought about something more important, my peace of mind. I replied, "Give me until Monday to decide. I need to be sure of what I want." Robert answered immediately, Take the time you need. This decision is yours alone. That night, before sleeping, I sat in my renovated sewing studio. The machine that had accompanied me for 20 years was still there, faithful, constant. I ran my hand over it affectionately. We have a lot left to do, old friend, I whispered to it. But now we do it for us. Monday arrived with unusual clarity. I woke up early, made coffee, and sat by the window where the morning light illuminated my workshop. I had made a decision over the weekend, one that surprised even me with its simplicity. I called Robert. Brother, about the loan. I want you to send a final proposal to Tyler. He can pay me in reasonable monthly installments over 3 years, with no additional interest, but if he misses a single payment, we proceed with legal action immediately. It's my last offer. Robert was silent for a moment. Are you sure? You have every legal right to demand full payment. I know. But I don't want to spend the next few years in legal battles. I want to live, accepted, good. If not, then we follow the legal path and I close that door permanently. But at least I'll know I gave him one last fair chance. You are more generous than he deserves. I'm not doing it for him, Robert. I'm doing it for me. To be able to look in the mirror and know I acted with integrity until the end. The proposal was sent that same afternoon. I didn't expect an immediate response, and there wasn't one. Life continued its new, quiet rhythm. I finished 2 major orders and turned down one that would have required me to work until dawn. The old me would have accepted any job regardless of the personal cost. The new me understood that my time and health had value. 3 weeks later, an envelope arrived by certified mail. I recognized it immediately. It was from a notary. Inside was a document signed by Tyler accepting the terms of the payment plan. No personal letter, no apology. Just his signature at the bottom of the legal document and the first monthly check. I looked at that check for a long time. I didn't feel triumph or satisfaction. Only a quiet sadness for what could have been and would never be. But I also felt something else. Closure. I called Robert to confirm everything was in order. The document is valid. If he keeps up with the payments, in 3 years you will be free of this financial situation. If he defaults, you have legal backing to act. Thanks for everything, brother. I don't know what I would have done without you. You would have found a way. You've always been stronger than you think, Margaret. You just needed to remember it. That afternoon, Linda and I finally booked the trip to the coast we had been planning. 2 weeks in April, in a cabin facing the ocean. As we made the reservation, she looked at me with that conspiratorial smile only true friends have. Do you know what the best part of this trip is? That we are doing it because we want to, not because there was time left over after attending to everyone else's needs. She was right. For the first time in decades, I was a priority in my own life. The community sewing group had become more than a hobby. We had become a genuine support circle. Sonia, the recent widow, was learning to rebuild her identity beyond marriage. Samantha had gotten a job and her own apartment. Every Thursday, we shared not only sewing techniques, but stories of survival, of courage, of women refusing to be defined by the pain others caused them. One Thursday, while working on a joint project, Samantha asked me something directly. Margaret, how did you know when it was time to set boundaries? I spent 20 years unable to do it. I left my needle on the fabric and carefully thought about the answer. I think it was when the pain of staying became greater than the fear of leaving. When I realized I was losing pieces of myself to maintain a relationship that only existed on my terms of sacrifice. When I understood that real love doesn't require you to annul yourself, Sonia added softly. And that sometimes the person you most need to save is yourself. We all nodded in silence. In that circle of women sewing while rebuilding their lives, I found something I didn't know I needed. A community of equals, not dependents. Months passed. Tyler complied punctually with the first 4 payments. There was never communication beyond the monthly checks. He didn't call me for my birthday. He didn't contact me at Christmas. It was as if I had ceased to exist for him outside the role of creditor. And strangely, that didn't destroy me anymore. I had learned something fundamental. You can love someone and still choose not to be available to be hurt by them. Love does not demand self-destruction. In April, Linda and I finally took that trip to the coast. 2 weeks of sun, sea, and deep conversations. One afternoon, while walking on the beach at sunset, she asked me if I regretted how things turned out. Sometimes, I admitted. Sometimes I miss the idea of having a united family. But I don't miss the reality of how that family was. The constant anxiety, walking on eggshells, measuring every word so as not to upset anyone, feeling always in debt for the crime of existing and having boundaries. And if Tyler appeared tomorrow wanting to reconcile, I thought about that as the waves broke at our feet. It would depend on why he wants to reconcile. If it's because he finally understood the damage he caused and is willing to build a relationship based on mutual respect, then we could try. But if it's because he needs something from me, then the answer would be no, because I learned that I cannot be the life raft for someone who insists on sinking. We returned from that trip renewed. My skin was tanned, my spirit light. The apartment welcomed me with that comforting familiarity of a space that finally felt completely mine. I resumed my routine with new energy. The sewing orders kept coming. My finances were stable. My health was good. And for the first time in 63 years, I wasn't waiting for someone else to validate my existence. One June morning, almost 8 months after the furniture incident, my doorbell rang. I looked through the peephole and felt my heart stop for a second. It was Tyler, alone, without Vanessa. He looked different, thinner, with some new gray hairs, his clothes less flashy. I waited a moment before opening. When I did, we looked at each other without saying anything for several seconds. "Hi, Mom," he said tentatively. "Hello, Tyler. Can I come in? I just want to talk. I promise I'm not here to ask for anything." I hesitated. All my reconstruction, all my carefully cultivated peace, could crumble if I opened that door. But I also knew that living in fear was another form of prison. "You can come in. But only half an hour. I have commitments this afternoon." It was a lie. I had nothing urgent, but setting the time was important. We went in. I poured him water. We sat down, him on the sofa, me in my shop chair, maintaining physical distance. "Vanessa and I separated," he said without preamble. 2 months ago, she went back to her parents. I said nothing. I just waited. Everything fell apart after the furniture thing. Her father tried to carry out his threats to ruin my business, but it turned out his contacts weren't as powerful as he thought. Vanessa became increasingly demanding, more frustrated. One day she just packed and left. I remained silent. He continued, words tumbling out. "I've been in therapy. The therapist made me see things I never wanted to admit. About how I treated you. About how I got used to taking without giving. About how I confused your unconditional love with an obligation on your part to solve my problems." My eyes misted over, but I didn't let the tears fall. "And why come tell me this now? Because I owe you a real apology. Not an apology of convenience because I need something. A genuine apology because I finally understand the damage I caused you." He stood up and knelt in front of me. That gesture broke me a little. "Mom, forgive me. Forgive me for using you, for disrespecting you, for forgetting everything you did for me, for being a selfish son who only sought you out when he needed something." The tears finally rolled down my cheeks. "Tyler, I don't know if I can simply forgive and forget. You hurt me deeply. You made me feel like I was only worth what I could give you materially. I know, and I don't expect you to forgive me now. I don't even know if I deserve your forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that I see it. I see what I did, and I am trying to be better." I really looked at him, perhaps for the first time in years. I saw genuine regret in his eyes, but I also saw something more important. I saw the possibility that he was finally growing up, learning. "Forgiveness isn't something I can give you in a half-hour conversation," I said finally. "It is a process, and I need to know that the changes are real, not just pretty words." "I understand. Could I? Could I come see you occasionally? Without expectations. Just to rebuild, little by little, if you allow me." I thought about all the reasons to say no. I thought about protecting my newfound peace. But I also thought about something Linda had told me on the beach. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting or going back to how it was before. It means letting go of the poison so it doesn't poison you. "You can come," I said slowly, "but with conditions. No asking for money, no emotional manipulation, no expecting me to go back to being the mother who solves everything. If you come as a responsible adult who wants to know his mother as a person, not as a resource. I accept all your conditions. He stood up and, shyly, extended his arms. Can I hug you? I hesitated. Then I nodded. The hug was brief, cautious, two people rebuilding a bridge that had been demolished. When he left, I stayed alone in my apartment. I didn't know if Tyler would really change. I didn't know if we would manage to rebuild something genuine. But I knew something with certainty. I was no longer the same woman I had been, and that new woman would never again sacrifice herself on the altar of others' expectations. I sat next to my sewing machine, the faithful companion of 2 decades. I ran my fingers over the worn metal and smiled. We're still here, I whispered to it. And we are still enough. Because in the end, I learned the most important lesson of all. That self-love is not selfishness. That setting boundaries is not cruelty. And that sometimes, to save a relationship, you first have to save yourself. I learned that forgiveness doesn't always unite. Sometimes, it simply sets you free.